Alright, shalom, shalom. Israel, before I get started, I'd like to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Harakak and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Salutations to the 144,000, the great multitude of the nation of Israel. Today's lesson, we're going to go into the book of Nahum, going into some of the text, as well as bring out some history or articles that may pertain to this chapter, right? Because again, the prophet Nahum, let's look at the see what contemporaries lived within that time, right? Salakia, let me just fix the brightness on this. Which you have Salakia. Take these out real quick. You have a timeline of the prophets, right? Which you have here, the major and minor prophets, right? So you have Nahum, which is circa 600 BC, Jeremiah, Daniel, Ezekiel, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, right? So when you read Habakkuk, Zephaniah, right, it mentions Nineveh to an extent. Nahum, because these were actual prophecies towards a Nineveh that existed during that time, but there is also a spiritual Nineveh, which is America, Babylon the Great, which is also known as Sodom, Egypt, and so on and so forth, right? See if we can type in the blue letter, Salakia. Go to the blue letter Bible, and let's look up Nineveh. See if we can find anything on that. Nineveh. Salakia. Let's see. Nineveh. Okay. So you have it written in the book of Genesis. Prophet Jonah, of course, prophesied against Nineveh, which there was an actual Nineveh and an actual prophecies that were against it. But when you read the book of Nahum, you tend to compare it. It sounds, which you have to be spiritual to understand this book, right? So we read Nineveh chapters 1, 2, and 3. It's mainly talking about Esau's rise and his coming fall, right? Esau, Edom, which is the devil that the Bible speaks of, right? So through the spirit of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, right, this is how we can expound on these prophecies and prophetic books, right? You have to be spiritual, right? Like Yahushai said in John chapter 3, he said, how can you believe if I tell you of earthly things, but when I tell you of heavenly things, you do not understand, right? Which is why our people can't understand things like the Virgin Mary not actually being a virgin, just like the 144,000, right? They're not actual virgins. This is a it's not literal. Things aren't always literal in scriptures, in the scriptures, right? Salakia. Things aren't always literal in the scriptures, right? So you have to be spiritual in order to judge spiritual things, right? John chapter 3, right? Yahushua said, right? How can you believe if I tell you of earthly things but not of heavenly things, right? The Virgin Mary was not an actual virgin, right? Just like the 144,000 are not actual virgins. These are stumbling blocks, right, unto our people, right? They're offended by the word, right, because they're taught by the precepts of men, right? But anyway, right, these are contemporaries. Sometimes you'll hear the prophets mention Nineveh, Assyria, right? Let's go into some background on the book of Nahum. Salakia, bugging. Okay. So it says, let's go into the Nineveh, which we have Nimrod, which built Nineveh, right? Genesis chapter 10, right? Which is a biblical figure. He's one of the Hamites, but also you have to remember Nineveh was in Babylon, right? At times the Hamitic tribes ruled it. At times, right, the Shemitic tribes, which are called Arabs today, right? Because you got to remember, in that Mesopotamia, you had the land of Elam close to it. You had the land of the towards the east. You had the land of the Amorites towards the north, right? Because they were the mountain dwellers, which is the head of the Hamitic tribes. You have other Semitic tribes in the what is called the Fertile Crescent. These are all terminologies which are have been adopted throughout time. Um, Mesopotamia, which is say it's Greek, goes back into the Greek. So, in a sense, Salakia, Satan's trying to hinder the lesson. But these are all right synonymous with the prophecies written, right? Nimrod, built Nineveh, right? You had in those lands several Semitic tribes which always battled for control of that land. You had the Amorites, which dwelt in the north of that land. Towards the east, you had the land of Elam, where you had the other Semitic tribes, right? They're called Arabs today, right? But, right, or we call them Ishmaelites because it's a general term, right? Just like Arab, it's just a general term. It's in the Bible. But today you have many that identify as Arabs because it's just a general term, right? Which just means mixed. But the point is, Nineveh was built pursuant to Genesis chapter 10, verse 11, right? By Nimrod, which is one of the sons of Ham, right? Then for example, you have which are the proto-Babylonians, the original Babylonians, right? In the sense that Nimrod was around when Babel was built, the Tower of Babel, because he was a mighty warrior in the earth. You have Nineveh, you have Asher, right? But then other tribes adopted these names, right? And for example, you have the Neo Babylonians, or not the Neo Babylonians, which you could say in a sense are the those that dwelt in Mesopotamia, Aram, uh, where Abraham dwelt, right? And Salakia, let me change this damn thing real quick. That's annoying. So just a little background, right? When you hear, for example, Assyria, it's not always you had Proto-Assyrians and you have the Neo-Assyrians, which today there is even in Assyria, and it's not the same Assyria as in old time, right? But let's get right into it, right? Just a little background. Let's go into the Nahum chapter 1. And actually, let's get some background on the prophet Nahum. Just type in Nahum in the Bible. It says he was a minor prophet whose prophecy is recorded in the Tanakh, also called the Hebrew Bible in the Old Testament. His book comes in chronological order between Micah and Habakkuk. Which his life says, under that category, says his name means comforter, which is Nahum, meaning certain times you'll read it, it'll mean to comfort, other times it means to repent, right? But not literally. Repent would actually be shawab, meaning to turn back, right? It just means let's see if we can go to the blue letter. So the name would be Nahum, which means comfort, consolation. So it just means consolation, right? But you could say comfort. The root word is Nahum, meaning to sigh, to breathe strongly, to be sorry, right? To be sorrowful, or to pity, to console, right? It just means consolation, right? But here's the point, right? It says one account suggests that his writings are a prophecy written in about 615 BCE, just before the downfall of Assyria, right? So he was prophesying the downfall of Nineveh, which was part of Assyria, right? Because you had one of the great rivals of the Israelites, which were the Assyrians, which are basically, right, they're known as throughout time as Assyrians, Chaldeans, Aramites, right? These are all, right, various names in which they are known. For example, even the Midianites, they're known as Ishmaelites. But how could they be Ishmaelites, right? Unless they are brothers of Ishmael, right? Which is a little known fact, right? And I went over that breakdown, right? Torah is actually, right, when you think about it, they have to be called Ishmaelites for a reason. That is because their brethren is Ishmael, right? So you read about Keturah having children. This is just another way to speak about Hagar, right? But that's going into another lesson, right? So this was about the downfall of Assyria. It says, while another account suggests that he wrote this passage as liturgy just after his downfall in 612 BCE. Right. So this just gives you a little background on why you hear things like Syria, Nineveh, Babylon, Babylonia, because not only are these landmarks, this is actually talking about these various locales in which and nations that the Israelites always had a plight with, whether under captivity, whether in certain pretenses. There was always a certain history attached with that, right? With these locations and nations and tribes, right? But anyway, let's get right into it, right? Shalakia. Nahum chapter 1, verse 1. Lord willing, you're edified through the power of the Spirit of Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Makakodash, right? And as always, double honors to the elders and apostles, great millstone. So it says, the burden of Nineveh, which is in the book of the visions of Nahum, the El Koshite, Masha'ah Naya Nawa, Sapar Chazwan Nahum, Hal Al-Quashiyah. Nahum 1 and 2, God is jealous and revengeth, the Lord revengeth, even the Lord Yahweh. Allah Qanah wa Nakwam Yahweh Nakwam Yahweh. And is a Lord of wrath, which is vengeful, the Lord, unto his adversaries. Wa Ba'al Hama wa Nakwam Yahweh La Tazar Yahweh. Tazar meaning adversary. Baal actually means possessor, but this is right. For example, you have the Lord of Destruction, so on and so forth. Other various terms, right? And it says, and recompenses he unto his enemies, which is one Natar Hawa La Ayab Yahweh. Let's look at that word Natar. Sometimes you'll read it as Natar, or sometimes you'll read it as Natazar, right? Which is the same word, right? Just it means to defend, right? Nahum chapter 1, Strong's H5201 Natar, which figuratively would mean to reserve, right, or to recompense, to guard, right? Natar, Natazar, to keep. Another way to say keep would be shamar. In a sense, to reserve, figuratively. Or you could say recompense, right? But reserve would be a lot better, right? But you wouldn't say, and reserveth he to his enemies, right? Unless you understand what it's talking about. He reserves his rage, which is hama, meaning to be hot or angry. Jake says that in the world, I'm hot, right? I'm hot right now, I'm pissed, right? Nahum 1 and 3, the Lord is slow in anger and great in strength. Yahweh Arak Apium Wagadal Kach, and surely does not take the Lord, and surely he is not taking the Lord in the whirlwind. Wanakwa La'a Yanakwa Yahweh Basa Wapa, right? Which that means Sawap means whirlwind, right? And in the tempest, which is his way, Bashayara the Rakwa, right? And the cloud upon the dust of his feet. Wa Ainan Abak Regalia Wa. Right? So the Lord is slow to anger, Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, great in strength. And he's not taken in the whirlwind, right? Another way to take would be laquach, but qua would be actually to collect, or a collective. It's another way, it's a softened form of laquach, right? Which is basically saying, right, the Lord is not taken in his own way, right? He's not manipulated, right? And the tempest is his way, right? That is talking about traveling in the whirlwind, in the tempest, which are the chariots, right? Like it says in Revelation chapter 5, and verse 10. Let's get that real quick. You read about that in Deuteronomy chapter 30 and various other precepts. Right, let's get that in Revelation chapter 5 and 10, verse 11. And I beheld, and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beast and the elders, and the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. Right? Let's get that in Deuteronomy. I believe that's 33. Deuteronomy 33 and 2. And he said, the Lord came from Sinai and rose up from Seir unto them. He shined forth from Mount Paran. And he came with 10,000s of saints. From his right hand went a fiery law for them. Right? Let's get one more. Daniel. I believe that's chapter 7 and 10. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him. And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set and the books were open. Right, it's talking about the chariots ascending from the Lord's feet, which is the Lord's earth is the earth is the Lord's footstool. Right, that's what it's talking about. Let's go back to Nahum. Right, so Nahum is just speaking about the Lord's omnipotency. Right, how he's gonna commit his wrath, right, unto the nations, Esau, Edom, right, via the clouds, which are the chariots, which is another way to say chariots, which are as dust, thousands and thousands times 10,000, right, coming from his feet, right, which the Lord doesn't need to come off his throne, right? He has his only begotten son, Yahushai, right? He's going to do the right? The dirty work for him. Not the dirty work, but you get what I'm saying, right? Commit all judgment unto the Son, like the scriptures say. Nahum chapter 1 and verse 4, to rebuke upon the sea and to dry it up, and all of the rivers, to dry it up, right? And all the rivers to make dry. Gayar, Bayam, Bayabasha, Wa, Wakal Ha Nahorath, Ha Horyab, right? Because what does the book of what is it? Second Address, what is that? 13 and 14. That my son Yahushua would rebuke the wicked inventions of the heathen, which is through his servants, right? Which starts with the word, which is why it says in the book of Daniel that the books were opened, the judgment was set. It's already written. It's already been explained in these latter days, right? Like Elder Apostle Har recently said, who can but prophesy. That means you're actually going to have those that understand the prophetic books. You're going to have those, the teachers. You're going to have the heads. You're going to have those that come after them, right? So our job is to work in our respective office, right? Not to make, right, ourselves take a lofty position like you have these other camps. Bishop Nathaniel, right? You have Bishop Nathaniel, call himself General Nathaniel, and Chief Priest, Prince of Delusion, Alazar, and other so-called, right, elders in Israel, right, which says in the book of Luke, Yahushua spoke about what? There are those that take the upper seats, right, but let the greatest be among you as he that serveth, right? So this is what we're doing, providing, right, our reasonable service, right, which is according to our office that the Lord has given unto us, right? So this is how the Lord is going to rebuke the seas, which is also talks about the incoming famines, the word going out, the famine of the word coming, right? All these things will be made manifest, right? The rivers drying up, meaning the vowels, the music is going to be brought low, which is why you see stores being looted, you see stores closing, right? You don't see Jake and the nations in that mirth that they once were in, right? Because they're tired, right? They're tired of right, waiting on Esau, Edom, right, to bring his charagma, right? And Esau knows that, right? He's waiting on the nations to make their move, because Esau doesn't have to make a move. He just has to wait till the rivers dry up, right? Which he does through his through his false flags, through his agendas, right? You have to remember this is a self how do you call it? This is all set up by Esau Edom, right? For the economy to go down, right? He's just buying time, right? So this is how his New World agenda is going to be made, right? By causing the nations to put the things into their situation in their hands, for them to make a move, right? This chess, not checkers. This checkers, not chess, or this chess, not checkers, Salakia. Right, so drieth up all the rivers, right? A cutting off will be in Bashan, and Carmel, and the blooming of Lebanon, there shall be a cutting off, right? Which is translated here as fail or wither. That word malal just means, it either means to speak or to cut off, which is where you get the word circumcise, right? So it says, malal, meaning a, malal, a cutting off. Malal, Bashan, wa Carmel, wa Parach, Lebanon, malal. Right? So that's what it's talking about, right? Because the Lord isn't gonna, like it says in the book of Habakkuk, was the Lord displeased with the rivers, with the earth. He doesn't need to destroy his creation. The earth didn't do nothing. Yeah, it's gonna be ravaged. It's going to be in the third World War III. There's gonna be like fire often being sent out, like it says in the book of Second Esdras, which also goes into these forest fires that is happening everywhere. Canada, Maui, right here in America, Babylon the Great, right, and so on and so forth, right? Let's actually go into that while I have this up, right? I'm not sure if I brought this out. Actually, I brought it out in the my recent in the news video, so I'm just gonna move on. Let's look at that word malal. Actually, let's just move on. Let's look at it, right? Nahum 1 and 5. That word is Strong's H535, which is a mull. But you can't always go off what the blue letter says, right? A mull, to be sick, born, wax feeble. It says the kindred is a ball, which that's not correct. Just look something up real quick. That sounds like namal, meaning an ant, right? As in to be made small. But it all goes back to this root, malal, right? To cut off, applied to grass, herbage, grain, to fade, or that actually goes with another word. But you get the point, right? So that's the root, right? Nahum 1 and 5, the mountains quake. Because of him, Haryam Ra'ashwa Ma'manawa. Sometimes you'll read it as Ra'ash, sometimes as Ra'ad, right? And the hills melt and are lifted up from the earth from before him. Waha Gabayath Hatha Magagwa Wata Sha'a Ha'rataza. right? Because when Yahweh Shai returns, you're gonna have the chariots returning. You're gonna have right next to the chariots. You're gonna see right as Yahweh Shai is making his way to Babylon the Great. Like it says in Isaiah 19:1. You're gonna see the ICBM missiles following, right, going steadfastly into America Babylon the Great, like it says in the book of Second Esdras. I believe that's 15. They'll go steadfastly into Babylon, right? Let's get that real quick. Which this is why it's good to keep revisiting scripture, right? So you know which precept to pull. Which you'll see it right here. Actually, that's not it. I have to go further down. Might be 15. Second Esdras 15:41. Fire and hail and flying swords, many waters, that all fields may be full, and all rivers with the abundance of great waters. They shall break down the cities and walls, mountains and hills, trees of the wood, grass of the meadows, and their corn. And they shall go steadfastly into Babylon and make her afraid. Talking about the missiles, right? Salakia. Because the hills melting, that is talking about these smaller infrastructures, right? Not actual hills, right? They're going to be lifted up, right? When certain missiles hit certain regions, right? You're going to have debris flying, right? From before Yahweh Shai, before the chariots, right? And the earth and all the inhabitants in it, right? Which is why it reads, Wathabal Wakal Yashabia Baha, right? Another way to say earth is Aratazah or Thabal, right? Let's look at that word Magog, right? So you could say Aratazah meaning earth or Adamah ground, which means the earth, or you could say Thabal, which means the globe, or it's another way to say the known inhabited earth, right? Because scriptures say that what? All tribes of the earth will see Yahweh Shai and mourn. But he's not going to come with flowers, right? He's going to come, it's going to be a dark day, right? You're going to see storms, tempest, right? Like when you see a thunderstorm, right? When you see clouds, you see, right, the energy of the which is the thunderstorms, right? When you hear thunderstorm, you hear what? Loud thunders. You hear the skies like sounds like the skies are roaring, right? Strong winds, right? Let's look at that word Magog, which means to melt. Salakia. Strong's H4127. Mawag, or just simply Mag, right? So it says to flow down, to dissolve. That's what it means to dissolve, right? To melt away, right? Basically, it means to dissolve, right? Or melt away, right? Nahum 1:6. Before his indignation, who can stand? And who shall stand in in the fury of his anger? Which is Lapanya Zayamwa Maya Ya Imad Wa Maya Yakwam Baharan Apwa. Which it says Hamathwa, which is his anger, is poured out like fire. Nathaka Ka'ash, which is the wine of the Lord's wrath, right? Which we're drinking that wine, right? That cup right now. The cup is going to be turned unto the nations, which is why the nations are mad, right? Because they didn't really, they basically got a shitty deal, right? And they don't care, right? They just care about themselves, right? Ham as a collective is messed up, right? Ammon, the Moabites, right? The Ishmaelites, they're, right? Because what? You have the land of Ham, it's just messed up. You have the Middle East messed up, right? There's no actual prosperity going on there except for a few. You have Moab, Ammon. They're not doing too bad, right? Because they're close descendants of Abraham, right? But they're still going off, right? So it's going to be poured out like fire, right? The wrath of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, right? So it says, and the rocks are pulled down because of him, right? As in the infrastructure buildings, right? In the third woe, in the when the nukes hit, right? When all these things, right, that are written come to pass, right? Which is why it says Waha Tazarium Nathatazawa Mamanawa. Let's look at that word Nathataza. Which is Strong's H5422. To break down, to cast down, to pull down, right? Just means to break down, right? Haras is the word for to pull down, right? Because what? Right? Like I said, you're gonna have debris flying everywhere. When the destruction comes, right? It's gonna be like what they call it, The Living Dead, or I'm not sure what that show was called, where they got the zombies and all that. Right? It's gonna be like that, right? Nahum 1 and 7. God is good uh, for a refuge in the day of distress, and knoweth those that hope in him. Tawab Yahweh Lama'az Bayawam Tazara Wayadai Chasiyah Bawa. Let's look at that word Ma'az. Not my ass. It's Ma'az. Right? Strong's H 4581. Ma'az. Because that word Az means might, or one that is mighty, right? But here it means refuge. Ma meaning of, Azah or Azaz. To be strong, to be firm, to be mighty, strong, right? To be mighty, or Ma'az just means, it's another way to say refuge, right? Chasiyah, let's look at that word chas, which I believe that's the actual, doesn't mean trust. Trust is a patach. This means, this is the actual word for refuge, right? Chasah. So the Lord knows those that are His, like Paul the Apostle. I believe it was Paul the Apostle that said that, right? Nahum 1 and 8, and in the overflowing of the goal of the and in the overflowing of the passing over of the consummation. Waba Shatap Ibar Kala, right? Shatap means to overflow. Ibar means, right, to cross over. Kala means to complete or to consume, right? Or in this case, a sweeping flood, right? Which is not talking about a flood of water. It's talking about, right, the reason why it's called the second death is because it's going to be a flooding of fire, right? First death with the Lord flooded the earth with water, right? To make unto her place, right? Her place, makwa meaning place, the ha, makwama, that means that's a feminine form. Her place is America, Babylon the Great. Ya Aisha, makwama. And his enemies shall be chased into utter darkness. Wa ayab yawa, ya radab, chashak. That's the enemies of the Lord is Esau, Edom, the nations, 2/3 of our people. Right? That word radap means to chase. Dalak means to pursue. Chashak meaning darkness. Nahum 1:7. How dost thou imagine unto the Lord a consummation, or Salakia? What does thou imagine unto the Lord, or how do you plot against God? Mata Chashab Wan Al Yahweh. A consummation is what he shall do. Kala Hawa Aisha. There shall not rise up again an adversary, la'a thakwam payam yam tazara. Because this is it, right? Which is why I kind of hit my spirit when Elder Pastor said it's time to make the most of the ministry, right? While the Lord still has the word go out, right? While we are still, right, able to reach as many as we are able to reach, right? Through the Spirit of the Lord, right? And right, verse 10, because even the briars are entangled, and like drunkards that are drunken shall be consumed, like the chaff which is dried up thoroughly. Kaya ad sayarium sabakium waka sabaayum akalwa ka kwasha yabash mala'a. Sayar meaning a thorn, right, or briar. Sabak means to be entangled. Saba'a meaning a drunkard, right? Because the nations are entangled in their own right. They basically, it's a lose-lose situation for Esau, for the nations, for 2/3 of our people. Because 2/3 are going to receive their judgment. The nations they can't stop the end of this world. Esau Edom, whether he does good or bad, which he's not going to do good. I mean, there's times when he'll come up as that, and he's done that throughout time. Come up as a savior in a sense, right? For example, you have particular reparations going on, and Book of Sirach says that he will complain of an ungodly father. He will seek to satiate the poor, right? But the bigger picture, right, is that this kingdom's gonna fall. No kingdom is lasts forever, right? So the briars are the nations, right? The drunkards they're drunkards too, right? They're entangled in their speech, right? You got Edomites calling out this wicked system. You have many that will conform, right? You have the nations, right, trying to come up with their own currency and trade, means of trade. But all these things are for nothing, right? Like scriptures say, they labor in vain. I believe that's 2nd Esdras chapter 16, the last chapter. They labor in the fire, they labor in vain. Let's see if we can get that. And the NLT, has not the Lord of the Heavens Armies promised that the wealth of nations will be turned to ashes? They work so hard, but all in vain. Right? Might have to bring that out of camp. Right? Because they're hastening. Esau's hastening. Everybody's trying to figure out how to get around the Lord's judgment. Just not gonna happen. You can't get around what is already. It's already at a distance. You can see it coming. Right? And they're gonna be like chaff. You leave some bushels and you leave them to dry. That's perfect for firewood to start a fire pit or whatever the case may be. Dried up trees, just right. The Lord is gonna, right, is his work is perfect. And it's more so common sense, right? Because you, as a king, you have to have your subjects in subjugation. There's no, right? People are gonna get desperate, right? Eventually. Nahum 1 and 11. Of thee cometh out one who deviseth against the Lord evil, a counselor of no profit. Mamka yataza'a chashab al Yahweh raya ya itaza bal ya'al. So one that plotteth against the Lord is Esau, Edom, and the nations, right? But Esau is at the head of this thing, right? Which is why his judgment is that he should perish forever. He's not going to see the land of uprightness because he's not going to do upright. Nahum 1 and 12. Thus saith the Lord of the Lord, if there shall be, if holy and so many and much and so like, yeah, let me look at the blue letter. That's kind of, sometimes Amalek got it on point with these translations, sometimes not, because he wasn't given this spirit. So Nahum 1 and 12. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, if they be peaceful, and so they shall be much, and so they shall be cut down, and they have passed through, and will afflict, and surely they will not afflict thee anymore, right? Ka mar Yahweh am shalamim wakan rabiam wakan nagazwa wa ibar wa inathka la'a a inaka iwad, right? Esau Edom, he's in that let's get together spirit, right? The nations are in that, oh, we're more than we are more than thou, we're more than you, right? Though they be at peace, though they be many, they shall be cut down, right? Gazaz. And pass through and afflict, and surely they will not afflict thee anymore. Because Esau Edom has passed through all nations. He's got bases in all lands, right? The nations are 2/3 of our people, right? They sell out, right? Whatnot. They're able to travel freely, right? Perform their councils. But this is it, right? Like it says in the book of Lamentations, Jerusalem's affliction being fulfilled, right? And it's not going to get better, right? Like Paul the Apostle said, he said, if you get together for the worse, not for the better. It's talking about the remnant, right? Nahum chapter 1 and verse 13. And now I shall break his staff, his yoke from upon thee, or his staff, because that's what matah means, a staff, or you could say yoke, because it's referencing a yoke bar, right? One yoke bar, for example, is a key which Esau Edom used for the yokes that he put on Jake. That is a yoke bar, right? Other yoke bars are what? Certain yokes that Esau put on Jake to chain him. A chain is a yoke bar, right? And actual bars that he would put in between. Let's look that up real quick. Yoke bar. In slavery. Right, so this is a yoke bar. The forked end was placed around the captive's neck, an iron bar put across to hold it in place. That's wicked as hell. Right, so the Lord brought Jake here to receive their judgment, right, to be put into captivity. Ultimately, Jake was freed in a physical sense, not in the mental sense. Because even Esau knows how simple Jake is. Simple as hell, right? Which is why the Lord calls us sheep. We're so easy, we go astray so easily if we're not properly guided. And it says, and I will burst your cords apart. Which is going to happen with what? A cord, right? The modern day cord is these contracts you make with Esau. When you get your an ID, a license, credit card, these are all certain contracts, right? Salakia. And thy bonds, because asar means to bind. Asiar means to be captive. Your bonds. So it says, wa aitha ashabar matawa ma aliyaka wa ma sarathiaka anathak. Meaning nathak, meaning to strike against or to break off. To separate. Which is says here your cords and burst your cords apart. Which is in the deliverance, when the deliverance comes, right? We're not going to be subject to Esau forever, right? We get them new bodies, right? So on and so forth, like the brothers say. But I don't really like to mention it as that, because it's not really new bodies. There are old bodies, the heavenly bodies, right? Right now we're in exile. We're on a mission, right? We're in the flesh. The spirit is the original body, right? If you can understand what I'm saying. Verse 14, and as commanded against thee the Lord, Shalakia. And as commanded upon thee the Lord to not be sown of your name anymore. It's talking about Esau Edom. You can precept that with Obadiah 1 and 18, right? after those 1,000 years, right? Gonna pile them up. Um, and that sounds harsh, but that's what the Lord says. It's not about what we feel. We're gonna burn them up. That's it. However they come back in the regeneration, they might come. Their spirits might come back in the other nations, or right, whatever the case may be, or the Lord may destroy their spirits. That's not up to us, right? That's Yahweh Bashim Yahushai's will, right? So it says, Wa tazawa al yaka Yahweh la'a yazarai mashamka iwad. From the house of your gods I will cut thee off. I will cut off the graven image and the molten image. I will place your grave, because thou art vile. Ma bayath alahayaka akariyath pasal, meaning a graven image. Masaka, molten image. I will place ashayam, your grave. Quara wabaraka kaya qualath, because thou art vile or lightly esteemed, which the word qualal means to make light of something, or something light, like the Israelites called the manna light bread. Which bread, when you don't cook it properly, it tastes like a damn sponge. You don't let it ferment enough, right? Just to give an example, Nahum 1 and 15, we'll stop at 15, because here it starts on chapter 2, but this is a good ending. I like this one. Nahum 1 and 15, behold, upon the mountains the feet of he that bringeth good tidings, to publish peace. Hana al ha-harayim regalia ma bashar. Bashar is what, it's good tidings. That's which is the gospel, right? Ma sham ya'ai shalom, to publish peace. The feast of Judah, thou shalt keep. Thou shalt keep. Chagya Yahawada Chagyaka. The peace to pay your vows. Shalom Nadar Yaka. Basically pay your vows, right? When you come into this thing, you have, right? Like Elder Yashwamba says, you come into a not necessarily an oath, because the Lord says don't make oaths, but you have a vow to do the best of your ability to work this ministry, right? Because we'll not again anymore to pass through in the wicked, or he that does not profit. Which will be completely cut off. Kala Nakarath, which is Esau Edom, right? Because you see, the curses are going to go on the nations, and they are already, right? See what's happening, right? But Esau, he did the worst, right? He did what the Lord said not to do, and more. It says, Kaya la'a Yawa sayap Iwad la Ibar baka bal Ya'al Kala nakarath Bahashem Hamashayak Yahushai. So with that, this is Nahum, Salakia chapter 1. Going to the Hebrew, This brother Yatazadak Hero Israel. And as always, Lord willing, you're ratified. Giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Harakakwadash, and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Wam Yasha Allah, Abad Babal, Shalom.